Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Hi, could you please tell me where you guys are joining? Because, oh, I see we have audience from Germany, and I'm also here located in Germany. Oh, from New York City. Hi. Wow. And we have from Costa Rica, from Poland. Hi, welcome everyone. Wow, we have audience really around the world. Hello, from Greece. Oh, it's so nice to see everybody around the world. And hi, so my name is Sui. I'm from Door International here, and I would like to welcome everyone on behalf of Door International to today's webinar. And we're so thrilled to have you here today because we're here to explore why leadership needs a remix. It's not my style. Mastering situational leadership. We have fantastic speakers lined up who will be sharing their insights and expertise on this important subject. And just before that, I would like to tell you a little bit more about Door International. And it's my pleasure to introduce our president, Elisa Di Giorgio. Hi, Elisa, how are you doing?
Hello, Sui. Thank you. I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm just thrilled to see what our guest speaker is going to share with us today.
Yeah, me too. Wow, it's amazing. We have audience and people dialing in from all over the world, from Angola to Japan, USA, Chile, and so far and so on. Welcome, everybody. And I'm very excited to be here. My name is Elisa Di Giorgio, and I'm the president at Door International. And about Door, maybe just a little bit, a very short introduction of who we are. Door is your global training, consulting, and solution provider. We are in the market since 1981, so a little bit more than 40 years young, and maybe something that most of you did not know, or many don't know. We are originally a Dutch company. And a little fun factor about the Netherlands. Did you know that the Netherlands grows the most tallest people in the world? I mean, I cannot talk about that. I'm Italian, so I'm rather short. So, however, I'm located in Germany. Another little fun factor about Germany, we don't have the tallest people, but we have the most beer providers in the world. We have, in fact, over 5,000 beers. But that's just a side note. A little bit more about Door. We pride ourselves, we are very proud actually that we are training people from all over the world. And so far, I believe we have touched over millions of individuals and thousands of organizations where we help them develop their talents and achieve their results. We train in over 40 countries and in over 40 languages and over 100 countries worldwide, with resources around the globe. In fact, we have about 450 people around the globe that support our clients in the world to reach their results. So can you mute yourself, please? I'm sorry for that. Thank you so much. And just to conclude on that, since this year, actually, we're very proud partnering with CLS, the Center of Leadership Studies. And saying that, I would hand over back to Sui. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Elisa. Thank you. And you know, at this point, I would like to welcome our guest speakers today. And the first one is Sebastian. So Sebastian is a renowned expert in the field of training and consulting. He joined Door International in 2014. And since then, starting delivering trainings and coachings in 3 languages across more than 20 countries. But you know what's the most remarkable thing about Sebastian? He is the youngest facilitator in Door's 42 years histories to build and deliver behavioral change, accountability, and culture change projects. Hi, Sebastian, welcome, and thank you for doing this for us.
Hi, Sue. Thanks for the introduction. I guess I'm proud for what you've mentioned, but by all means, let's see if there's some things in this session that we can have our audience learn, engage with, and essentially reevaluate how they're doing. But before we get into it, I'd like to introduce someone that I'm very humbled to be co-presenting with today, and that's Mr. Sam Shriver. Now, Sam is a renowned published author that has affected thousands of people's lives by helping them understand what leadership is, what relationships are, and in personal time, also extremely inspiring with the work that you do for communities and nature. And Sam, anything you'd like to share with the group before we move on?
Well, yes, Sebastian, in the interests of complete candor and authenticity, I want you to know that after this introduction, I'm going to be redoing my introduction slide, because compared to yours, it's just boring. I don't know if I've got to do something different with my hair or whatever else, but yeah, that was noticeable. And sincere thanks to Sway and everybody at DOOR, yourself at the top of the list, for partnering with us and including us on this webinar. It is rare that we do something with an organization that has been around as long as we have. We have a 50-year history in the same industry. We've been a global company for those 50 years, and in ballpark 15 million people around the globe, have been through some form of situational leadership. So credit to you and everybody at DOOR, for sustaining your the products and the services that you bring to people around the globe. And we just couldn't be happier or more excited about this partnership. So thank you very much.
Oh, it's great to hear it, Sam, because we feel the same way. And by all means, this is why it was so straightforward to design such a webinar for our audience. Essentially, we know that this material, having half a century of resonance with the industry, with leaders and decision makers, and anyone that wants to develop their professional skills, really still works today. And so going into that, just so everyone has a brief roadmap of how we're going to be going through the topic, is first, we want to have a bit of a discussion so that each of you that are listening can kind of consider, what is your leadership style? How do we tend to work with others? Do we essentially consciously decide how we're leading those individuals? And so we'll do a quick kind of introductory round. Then we'll go into some storytelling, case studies that show how leadership styles work and how they don't work sometimes. Then finally, when is it that we should be using different leadership styles, and really go in to what situational leadership brings, what the core model can help professionals do when they're working on completing essential tasks to get to their desired results. And finally, a Q&A. And for the Q&A, if any questions come into your mind while we're going through the session, please do look at the dashboard. It's probably on the top or the bottom of your screen. There'll be a little icon there that says Q&A. Click there, write your question, and we'll just park it until we get to that segment, and we'll address it at that point. But by all means, the chat button is something that we're going to be using throughout the next 40 minutes or so. And so before we get into this discussion of what our style is, I'd like to ask you, what do these figures have in common? Now, first, here on the left, we have a gentleman. His name is Labi Siffre. Many of you probably don't recognize him, or maybe haven't even heard his name. Now, he produced a song in 1975 called I Got the ... Interesting. Yeah, a musician from the 70s, somewhat renowned to those that know about it. Now, this gentleman that's just appeared might be more recognizable to some of you. He's a rapper, award-winning musician called Eminem, or Marshall Mathers, and he released a song in 1999 called Hi, My Name Is. Now, it'd be hard for anyone that was, listening to music at the end of the millennium in 1999 that didn't hear this kind of earworm of a song. It's got stuck in lots of people's minds. Now, a big part of that was the melody that actually came from Labi Siffre's original song. So despite being about 25 years apart, Eminem remixed part of Labi Siffre's music so that it could be relevant today. He essentially adapted something that was great when it first came out and made it available and relevant in today's context. Now, let's listen to another example. Does anyone recognize the person or the figure depicted in the image? I'd be surprised, but if you do, feel free to write it in the chat. Maybe any of our Chinese participants. Sui, oh, happy to see you there. Sui, who's this figure?
Okay, so for a little bit of background information, I am from China, and this is the Monkey King. And as I grew up, this is the story that we hear. And it's so just fantastic, the journey to the West. But I know it's an old picture. So Sam, what do you want to tell us?
Well, what I want to say is the Monkey King, also known as Sun Wukong, he was the main character in the epic Journey to the West. It was written in the 16th century. Most people wouldn't, unless you're really interested in classical Chinese literature, would know about this. However, many of you might recognize this gentleman on the right side. In fact, now he's got a balloon in the Macy's parade. So in the US and globally, we certainly have a lot. And I see that we have Pokemon and Songo from our participants named. And yes, his name is Son Goku. He was a character created in 1986, Japanese author. And essentially, it's the same character that's been adapted or remixed for today's generation. It's essentially saying things that are relevant, things that are valuable, need to be adjusted so that they become relevant once again. And what we're looking at here, just so we understand what I mean by remixing our leadership, it's essentially the need to adapt to different circumstances. It's the need to understand the context, the people that we're working with, the audience that we're trying to entertain in this case, or lead when we're working with other fellow professionals. And so, and Ricky mentions here in the chat that in India he's Hanuman. People consider Sun Wukong a reincarnation of Hanuman or vice versa, depending on the timing that you attribute to each character. Great observation, Ricky. Thank you. And so let's go into our first chat discussion. What aspects of leadership come naturally to you? Now, please do feel free to type in the chat box. How do we like to lead a group? What do we normally do? Essentially, Ricky puts a good point here, listening. He's a leader that likes to listen. Fikriye mentions listening as well. We have empathy from Andrie, and Zari mentions influence. And I think this is a crucial aspect of leadership. Sam, what do you think about Sadi's comment here, that her aspect of leadership is to influence?
Well, I think it's a very good comment, first off. So thank you very much. And primarily because since we started at the Center for Leadership Studies, we have defined leadership as influence. Those are, synonymous terms. Now, it is interesting in taking a look at what many people chatted in. I think when you ask people, what are you most comfortable with, or how would you like to be perceived as a leader, you regularly get words like listening, empathy, supportive, participate, collaborate, all of those different kinds of things. And it becomes much more interesting when you're in a line management or a situation where you have to influence somebody. And what if the person that you have to influence doesn't know what they're doing, or is just really struggling with confidence or whatever else? I mean, you could listen to those people all day, and in many cases, what it will do is just increase their anxiety. So the whole idea of, first off, what you want to be as a leader is one thing, how you would like to be perceived, but then there's the reality of the scenarios and the situations that you face each and every day. And not only at work, but at home with your families, sometimes making very tough decisions with kids that are at a variety of different levels. And I'll tell you, very creative slides, and I don't want to take any credit for them whatsoever because I deserve none, Sebastian, when you were kind of going through how could something in 1975 still be relevant today? That's the key word, right? And if you've been around for 40 years, you fight the same battle. It's like, how could a model that was relevant in the 1970s possibly, with all of the change that has taken place, the disruptive change that has just engulfed our planet, how could that model still be relevant today? And the reality is it's probably more relevant now with all of the change that's gone on than it ever has been, because as much as things change, there are still certain fundamental aspects of effective influence, when you're talking about getting things done as a leader. So that, I think, influence for us says it all. That's what it's about. Regardless of what you're comfortable with, it's about influencing somebody to do something that's in front of you.
Excellent. And thank you for the elaboration. I think that's key, because essentially what you've mentioned is we all are going to be influencing. And here we see some saying we listen, we have consulting and collaborative versions of leadership, control or inspiration, and we like to inspire. And so each of those influence in a different way. Now, of course, control will often focus on getting things done. And so what naturally comes to you is let's make it happen. And I think many participants probably have heard different personality profiling. And if you're analytical, you might want to really see the detail, get to the really nitty gritty of anything that's taken place. But then we have others that are looking for inspiration, discussing and observing, as we see from Yuali. And this is valid. Now, I think what's key is something you mentioned, Sam, is saying, well, someone that has no idea what to do doesn't really just want you to listen to them because they don't really know what questions to ask because they're so new to whatever needs to get done. And so we're kind of getting to the point where we see naturally some of us like to consult, collaborate, and inspire. Others like to show their hand and fill that supportive role. Now, I'd like to ask a follow-up question with this. And essentially it's, let's put you on a ship that needs to get across the continent. And it's dangerous. It's challenging. When things get tight and we're out of our comfort zones, what is the motivating factor that makes us want to be collaborative or consulting? Do we even stay in that mode when things start getting a little hot under the collar? Let us know in the chat. And Joanna mentions the need to hate seeing indecision and the experience of maybe learning from Irena. Yeah, the experience is what motivates. And here Suez brought up the question once again in the chat. And by all means, these core areas of change is really where we're getting to, is that when circumstances change, we might also revert not only to the leadership style that we feel naturally comes to us as professionals. When things get difficult, we might revert even to a more carnal version of ourselves and change because the alarm bell started ringing. And it's valuable to recognize that we have these changes, and that normally comes from understanding where our motivation is sourced at. So when Irina talks about the experience, it's knowing that there's a learning going on. Evaluate what's happening in the place. Perhaps the need to achieve the goal to the same degree that we originally defined ceases to be the primary reason that we're going through the experience and going through the task. But throughout working that adjusted her leadership style. Now, what Ricardo mentions is that he likes to take risks and take chances once things start getting a little hot. And see, that changes very much from what we heard just a moment ago in terms of the need to control. When you risk, actually you start giving up control. And it's a very interesting adjustment. Now, Sam, what would you say now that we've heard a little bit of these transitions where people normally find themselves when they're trying to influence others and therefore lead others? When we bring up what is the core model of situational leadership, how does that relate to this?
Well, you again, if you take a look at many of the terms that were utilized when you said, how do you lead people? And, what does that look like? Many of those styles, for people that are unfamiliar with this 4-box framework, they sort of gravitate towards the blue. Like, what people like to do is listen and facilitate and participate. And so you can see there's really, that is contrasted by 3 other approaches that are defined by those 2 parameters that make up the 4-box model. And on the bottom is task or directive behavior. And I think it's good to think about that as like a 10-point scale. So the further you are to the left, the less of that you're doing, and the further you are to the right, the more of that you're doing. And that midpoint line obviously would be 5 on that 10-point scale. So the green style, telling, style 1, sort of hands-on, more, I'm going to tell you what to do, and I'm going to watch you do it, and I'm going to give you some feedback to make sure that I create movement to get you started. First off, at best, that's a short-term style. Sometimes when people don't know what they're doing, they need somebody to tell them, but they don't want them to tell them forever and ever. So the whole idea of style 1 is that it creates movement, but it's high on task behavior and comparatively low on relationship behavior. So if you see that vertical continuum, that also runs from 0 at the bottom to 10 at the top with 5 in the middle. So a style 1 would be high on task, low on relationship behavior. And style 2 is kind of high on both. So the leader is still making decisions, but explaining them and coaching them and talking and discussing and listening and all of those things. And that's a very, very popular approach. When we take a look at the data that we have from our lead self and lead other instrumentation, that's a very popular approach. When you cross that midline, it's a very important thing, because now on the right side, the leader's making the decision. Style 1, leader makes decision, closely supervises. Style 2, leader makes decision and explains and coaches and is there to give feedback. Style 3, it's a follower-made decision. Now the leader gets into that. I'm going to listen. I'm going to reflect. I'm going to talk. We're going to participate. We're going to facilitate. But this is your call. You have to determine what you want to do and what you're most comfortable with. And so that's high on relationship behavior, but low on task or directive behavior. And then finally, traditionally, what we now know as empowerment used to be called delegation or a laissez-faire style of leadership. That style of leadership is, first off, low on task behavior, but it's also comparatively low on relationship behavior. It's basically a style that says, you know what you're doing, you're very good at it. Go ahead and do it. I'm here if you need me, but up to you. So those 4 styles have generally depicted all of the options, that continuum, what we call the multicolored curvilinear function, so to speak. That continuum describes all of the styles that a leader has the option to utilize in any given situation.
Thank you for the introduction, Sam. And I think it's so valuable to see this curve as a continuum. We've denoted those squares in terms of leadership styles, how we're working and influencing people that we're working with. But by all means, things need to change if we want to continuously be effective. Now, to put this into some context, let's go into some storytelling. What does this look like in reality? Or what does it not look like when you don't have these kind of tools in your mental infrastructure? The kind of workings that will help us contextualize who we're working with and how to get things done. Because each person, all these people in the pictures and everyone that we work with is aligned in different ways, has different capacities and different understandings of what a manager is supposed to be, what a collaborator is supposed to be, how to get things done. We all have different understanding of what the job normally is. And so to begin, I'll share a personal story. because by all means, I can see how, one, when you're tasked with something very important, like working directly for the Minister of Education of the South American country of Ecuador, and working to help get some of the top students in the country to get scholarships to go to the best universities in the world, was a monumental task. Now, I did this for almost 3 years, and essentially we sent out over 80% of the students that achieved such a score and such an academic level of performance to those universities. And in the beginning, I was working full on and making sure that it worked. We were so successful, and here's a picture of one of the groups of the coast of the city of Guayaquil, but we were so successful that the government, the minister himself said, we need to give you more support. And so, I was like on a life raft saying, thank you so much. My family misses me. And one of the support functions was filled by a recent recruit to the ministry who had worked with a multinational company prior to joining. The other support was from a very experienced gentleman. He'd been in the ministry for decades and essentially had a job for life. He was very comfortable, but he was very renowned for his understanding of how academic institutions in the country worked. I was supposed to be their boss. Well, I was their boss. And this need to have my team suddenly expand our potential became very urgent. And so essentially, to boil it down to a specific task, what I needed my team to do was provide a list of institutions that could support our academic development for these kids or for these scholarship students. And essentially, the multinational professional was able to complete the task, make the report, submit it in time so that then we could present it to the families and the other government officials. Hundreds of people would attend these meetings. My esteemed gentleman, professional, Mr. René Orejuela, he would struggle so much with this. And I really wasn't sure what to do, because normally, as Sam mentioned, the S3 leadership style, where you kind of problem solve and you're working with someone, but you think that they can do it, they just need a little bit of a push to get things done, is my natural leadership style. I feel like everyone is a critical thinker. Everyone wants to get things done. And if you just show them the tools and give them the goal, they'll be able to figure it out. They'll flow like water towards the destination. Now, I tried to employ this leadership style with Mr. Orejuela for this specific task of getting these reports done and available to broadcast. It wasn't going to happen. The day before the session, it still wasn't there. And I realized I needed to sit down with him and essentially do it together and show him exactly how PDFs work, how to input images from different sources so that you have a presentation and a document that can be given. I needed to change to what Sam mentioned was the S1 leadership style. I took a few hours to show him, but it turns out, although he was an ace at getting government documents approved by ministries, he really needed some hand-holding when it came to using these new systems. Luckily, everything worked out. We've got almost 1,000 students that had graduated now from top universities, and they're back in Ecuador, influencing, leading, and essentially being the professionals that are shaping the country at the moment. It's a story of me first. I didn't know that I needed to adapt my leadership style until it became a little late. And essentially, what happens here is there's a segment of the model that, Sam, I'm so happy you didn't call me out for saying, hey, what happened to one of the most important parts? It's the need to evaluate what we call the performance readiness for that specific task. Each individual has a level of alignment, of motivation and ability to get a task done. And what I didn't do was check, where is Mr. Orejuela's performance readiness for this task? Is he willing to do it? Is he able to do it? And those answers will help me align what level of readiness he's in so that then I can connect it to the appropriate leadership style. Sam, any comments here?
Yeah, and by the way, great example, and not surprisingly, you worked your way through that almost perfectly, if not exactly perfectly. But there's no such thing, if you look at the top part of the model, there's no such thing as the right style or the perfect style. There's the style all of us are most comfortable with, but that is absolutely irrelevant when it comes down to what should you be doing, what gives you the highest probability of success in a given situation for a task with an individual that you're going to be leading. So all of those styles work, and all of those styles don't, right? I mean, it's like that's the basic bottom line. So what determines when you should use one style versus another? And that in its essence is what situational leadership is. It's a timing mechanism. So it says, first off, identify the task as explicitly as you can identify it. And I will tell you, Sebastian, the scenario that you just went through is so very, very common. When you are dealing with someone who has a certain amount of tenure in the organization and in the role, it's just natural to assume that what you should be doing is, the red style, empowering. Well, they've been here, they know what they're doing, so I'll just tell them what to do, and then they'll get it done. And that's not the case. And especially when somebody is tenured and has been with the organization, why wouldn't they just say something to you? Why wouldn't they just say, hey, by the way, I don't know anything about, well, they feel a certain amount of insecurity or whatever because, or pressure, because you think, they should know what to do. So they sit there and they try to do it until the day before the presentation. And then when it becomes obvious, they're embarrassed. So the whole idea of situational leadership is that leaders and followers need to align as explicitly as they possibly can around what we call performance readiness. What is your task-specific ability and willingness to perform this task right now? Not what is your potential, where might you be at some point in the future, or where have you been in the past? But are you currently performing this task in the here and now, at one level or another? So the more you can discuss and align around performance readiness, that's where situational leadership becomes common sense, which is why it's been around for 50 years. Because if someone is low in performance readiness over there in the green, right? As far as the task goes, they don't have ability, they don't have experience, they haven't demonstrated skills, and they're lacking confidence or commitment or motivation. Well, if that's their performance readiness and you're the leader that needs to get something done through them, doesn't it just make common sense that what you should be doing is inserting yourself into that set of circumstances and giving that person the benefit of your experience to help them, to get them moving, to create, some kind of movement? It's common sense. The other end of the continuum, when you have somebody that is the exact opposite, red performance readiness level, R4 in our terms, they're able, they're willing, the task in question, they could do it in their sleep. They love doing it. They get some sort of intrinsic motivation from successfully completing the task and being the person that everybody looks to complete it. Well, those are the people where obviously empowerment makes sense, where it's like, yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. And, if you need me, I'm here. And if performance readiness is in the middle, it's somewhere between R1 and R4, well, that's where the highly participative styles make sense. That's where the high relationship styles make sense. So if you've got somebody that lacks ability but has willingness, or has ability but maybe lacks, like confidence or motivation, that's where the high discussion oriented, let's sit down, let's talk, let me listen, let me facilitate your movement. That's where those styles make sense. So the model itself is kind of an if-then approach, right? If this readiness level for this task, then this approach. And another thing you point out that is crucial, people do not fit into these boxes. It depends on what you ask them to do. The same person can be at any one of those 4 levels of readiness, depending upon what you ask that person to do. You could have a great salesperson, for instance, that's very good with customers in the field, ask that exact same salesperson to do administrative work or to put together a spreadsheet or to sit through an all-day meeting, and you might get a completely different level or combination of ability and willingness to do it. So that's where those two things really fit together. It's kind of like, when do you do what? All these styles work, and the primary driver is the task and the ability and willingness of the person who is performing it. That's how you approach influence.
Excellent, Sam. Thank you for that elaboration, because the risk of saying, oh, well, leadership styles, great. You know, I'm this person, they're that person. Once we start pigeonholing these individuals or our team members, we run huge risks. And this is what happened to me with this gentleman. I thought, hey, you know, I have this idea that he's very capable at these things, and therefore I'll leave him to do it. And it clearly wasn't right, because I had to think about the specific task that I was asking him to complete and adjust. We need to be able to be dynamic and adjust accordingly. And this is something that this model speaks to brilliantly. So one more example, just to go through something that might speak to more of our participants today. And it's an incident that happened during this past Super Bowl. Now, the Super Bowl is where the world champions of American football are found, or they win. And I say world champions because they are the world champions. And essentially, there's a lot of communication, a lot of messages sent around the Super Bowl. Now, the platform of choice is a well-known app called Twitter. Over 30 million tweets were sent out during the Super Bowl. Now, Twitter, essentially, this is where the incident takes place. Because of what happened, there was a breakdown in the program. Now, what caused this incident? We could say it's ego. We could say it's just popularity and needs to justify investments. But essentially what took place was that these two figures, probably recognizable to most of us, had a bit of a rivalry, in the sense that the President Joe Biden on the right, he was getting more visibility on Twitter. More people were retweeting what he was saying. More people were looking and liking his tweets. And so the gentleman on the left famously or infamously bought the company, and he wasn't quite happy about this. He said, well, I want to be the popular guy on this monumentous occasion. So he calls up one of the executives that notorious, or let's say he's very capable to get things done, kind of put out fires in the organization. And he instructed him, I want my tweets to be seen more than the president's. And so, scramble, this individual then told the software engineers, we need to get the CEO's tweets to explode on the platform. What ensued was, well, let's say Twitter kind of broke. Everyone was getting bombarded with Elon Musk tweets for about 24 hours to 72 hours. It took them a while to deconstruct the mess that they had made so that it started functioning again. Now, this just highlights this importance to know what the CEO, the leader, will then tell to his executive, I don't care how you get it done. You got to get it done. And by all means, it's a certain leadership style that seems to be common in a lot of his professional enterprises. Now, by all means, successful man gets things done, owns several companies that are doing fascinating things, highly rated on the stock market. However, this leadership style, it's saying everyone understands my vision. If I tell them to do it, I think notoriously was everyone's going to work hardcore. Now, what does hardcore mean? This is from a letter Elon wrote to his employees and caused a massive walkout in the company. But that definition of what his leadership style meant when it was applied was lost. And essentially, he was employing an S3 or an S4 leadership style, when by all means, what was going to be much more appropriate was telling those software engineers how to actually create the appropriate algorithms to take place, so that the app didn't break. So by all means, we'll see him succeed with different leadership styles, but that adaptation can ensure that our risk is minimized, that our task is completed appropriately, and that we don't fail on our endeavors. And so one thing I need to highlight here is where we start. Because we just started about 20 minutes ago introducing the model and these stories. And we focused on the leadership style first. But in fact, each of these two examples would have benefited greatly if myself or Elon Musk, wow, that's two names I'm happy to say in the same sentence, if we would have evaluated our team members' performance readiness level first, and then decide how can I lead this person or this group effectively. Of course, performance readiness level is something that we need a dialogue about. However, preparing ourselves, so we think, well, are they capable? Are they motivated? Are they willing to do this? Have they done this in the past? Will give us a starting point. We, by all means, being principled, we can't pigeonhole people by just what we think about them. Those dialogues need to take place. And as Sam mentioned, we need to be as accurate as possible in our evaluation so that we can lead appropriately. And something that I applaud very much is this is not a science. It's a probabilistic model. And this is something that means it will help reduce the risk of failing to meet the results that you want for any specific task. It doesn't mean by all means, R4 is always S4 in that segment. As Sam mentioned, it sometimes shifts because the conversations with those individuals unearth different things. And that normally happens when, well, we're going to get into an example very quickly. But with that said, Sam, anything you'd like to share with this importance of starting on performance readiness first and then deciding on what leadership style to use?
Yeah, and again, loved your example, loved you walking your way through there. The Super Bowl, Elon Musk and President Joe Biden. Not a lot of people could get that into 2 slides, but you found a way to do it. So thank you very much. But yeah, one thing that struck me is that the more naturally talented you are, the more difficult it is to coach people. And by that I mean, if you think about elite athletes, very few elite athletes become elite coaches because they just take for granted that the people that they're coaching have similar drive, have similar capability, have similar intuition, all of those different kinds of things. So across sports, it's very rare when you find someone, it happens, but it's rare where you find someone that was just gifted as an athlete that is also has what it takes to be a great coach. And I think the same way with people in business like Elon Musk. It's like they have ideas, they have vision, they have motivation, they can get people excited about it, but execution and coaching is something entirely different. How do we pull that through? And so there's you can use this model to coach on both the what and the how. And you have to make sure that you allow for that. But again, just in general, when you you have the discipline to break down what is it that situational leaders do at every level in the organization, they absolutely start with the task. And they are thoughtful people. There's a lot of diagnostic competency that goes into how do I pinpoint what's not happening now that I would like to see happen? How do I pinpoint that task and then provide influence, to use a term we've used a couple of times thus far, to get that to happen through people? How do I form a relationship with the work around people to make something happen? And so, yeah, it starts with the task and it starts bottom up. That is why today's situational leadership is more relevant than it has ever been. It's a model that is driven by followers, and
right.
Followers now more than ever are articulating their needs and where they want to work and how they want to work and all of those different kinds of things. And so in that context, leaders need to take their egos out of things and listen and adapt appropriately. But yeah, that would be my 2 seconds on what you have run through so far.
Wow, Sam, 15 minutes left and we start talking about taking our ego out. That's it's a good one, but I'm happy, I'm sure we're going to get listeners for the next session where we can go into what that means, how valuable that is in business and in general. Now, one thing I would like to see now that we've had a few examples, been introduced to the model, is what would happen. And this is a poll, so we need you all to participate, is essentially think about this situation. You're leading your team and you have a specific team member, and that person normally delivers on a task, but over the past week failed twice. How will I react? The poll is now in front of you. We'll wait for a few minutes because, of course, you need to read some of those answers and consider what we've gone through so far, but answer honestly. By all means, don't think about the right answer. Just answer the one that you would do. We've already got a few answers here now, so this is looking good. We've got a strong leaning towards one answer versus others, but I like it. We've got over 20% of participation so far in the poll. Oh, great. Now it's moving. The needle's moving with 40 seconds gone since the poll started. We'll leave it open maybe for another minute or so. Great. Not even minutes gone by. We have 50%, over 50% of collaboration here. We have trust that someone might be off. Something must be off with that person. Wait another week. Let's just wait and see if they get better, because we know that they're performers. All right, so 1 minute and 10 seconds, over 70%. We'll just wait for another 20 seconds. Some people might be thinking about, really, do I want to adapt, or am I going to go to my natural leadership style? All right, we just hit the 75%. Oh, we went a little higher than this. Great, thank you, final participants. For the final ones that weren't able to answer, hope you're still with us. Here we go. Let's share the results and take a look. So what we see here is that we've gotten most people answering that if anything has changed, listen and give them encouragement and remind them of the previous successes they've achieved. Sam, what do you think about most of our participants here? One of them trusting that something must be off. How do you see these results? How do they speak to you?
Actually very encouraging. And to the one person that, or I guess it would be one person that picked number A, it kind of depends on how crucial is the task. And there's some variability that goes into it, I guess. But normally, if you've got somebody that has been performing and for whatever reason isn't, C is a very easy intervention to make, and it would be a style match. So in the context of situational leadership, person still has the task-specific experience and skill, and they have high ability, but there's probably something off, when it comes to either confidence or motivation or whatever else. And this is a normal regression, pattern. So you've got somebody, they learn how to do something, they do it very well, they've been doing it for an extended period of time, and now all of a sudden you're not seeing that kind of performance. Well, what would a style 3 intervention look like? It's just like the answer that's given here is very good. Hey, you mind if we talk about this, Sebastian, just for a second or two? Everything okay? Is there anything going on? Because I've been noticing, this, and this. And now the ball is in the follower's court, consistent with style 3. They can respond, tell you what, they're bored, something's going on in their family life. Or whatever else, but at least you're having a discussion about the problem or the challenge or whatever it is. And your objective as a leader is to empathize, listen, do all of those kinds of things, and then hopefully get performance moving back in the direction where it was previously. But at a minimum, investigate the problem and find out what's going on. So I would agree with the with the majority of participants here that C would be a good common sense approach and also a good situational leadership answer.
Great, and spot on, because the scenario I wrote was really saying, well, if we took this as a science per se, or that it's rigid, we'd say, wait, but that denotes they've gone, I should probably do the S1. I should do B, remind them what needs to get done, detail how to do it, and tell them by when it's due. Really go into the directive approach. Now, we might miss a lot of nuance. We might lose a lot of personal rapport with that individual if we suddenly start, saying, well, clearly you just don't know what's going on or how to do it. In my example with Mr. Orejuela and the ministry, if I would have said expected that everything that he did wasn't happening correctly, he wasn't submitting things on time in general, and I sat down and said, hey, this is how you apply to something for this minister, and I didn't realize something else was going on, I would lose a lot of respect in his regard. Or he would simply smile and say, okay, I get it. I know exactly what's happening, but clearly you haven't engaged me in the correct way, despite my inability to get the task done. Now, what I'd like to do is move on to the Q&A, and let's take a look at what participants that have been listening so far would like to say. Now, Sue, if possible, I see that we have an anonymous attendee to say, if we attend a course or certificate organized by DOOR on leadership, do we get an official accreditation by the Center of Leadership Studies? Great question, and thank you for the approach, anonymous attendee, and looking forward for you to attend some of our classes. By all means, we do provide a certificate of attendance for our courses. However, the official accreditation by the Center of Leadership Studies relies on the course that you participate in. So by all means, accreditation is different than just participation. I'd say accreditation is leaning towards your familiarity with the IP, with the program. And if you would like to have that discussion, do stay in touch with us, because we will see what territory, what country you're in, and what your interests are in terms of the industries that you're looking to, how big your team is, and what exactly you're looking to achieve with using these renowned international programs. So I hope that helps. Attendee, if you'd like to elaborate any further, please do let us know.
Cool. So Sebastian, so we're getting some questions from the Q&A. One of the questions is that what values do you consider important in a leader or team?
What values are important for a leader? Wow. Sam, would you care to take this one?
Oh, yeah, sure. Pitch the hard questions to me. No, by the way, that's exactly what I would do if I was in your set of circumstances. But I think that's a very, very good question. It's a very good question, because if people don't trust you as a leader, if people don't trust you, if they at some level don't think you have their best interests in mind, it doesn't matter how good you are at situational leadership or anything else, right? If you don't have that kind of credibility, or don't invest in, or don't have that level of trust, in our terms and in our programs, we call it referent power, it's going to be very, very difficult to effectively lead. So I think that the one value, or the biggest one that comes to mind, is that it's not about you. It's not about your comfort level. If you're there to lead, you are there, you are a conduit to the success of others. It really is an other-centered approach to be an effective leader. Carol Dweck's work on, with everything growth mindset, it's about helping other people reach their potential. That's what being one of the primary values associated with situational leadership is. It's like, let's develop, let's conquer fear, let's develop expertise, let's develop skills, let's see where that path takes you. So I think it really is an other-centeredness, that is the primary value that drives situational leadership. And in there somewhere, Sebastian, is that discussion of ego. It's sort of like, if you get into a set of circumstances as a leader in an organization where it's sort of like you're dealing with a 5-year-old kid or something. Because I said so is the response that's going around in your head. You're probably going down the wrong path. It should be exploratory and discussion based to a point, where you can still, kind of make a decision and provide direction if the discussion isn't going anywhere. But I think other centeredness more than anything else, and getting your ego out of it, are key values that drive situational leadership.
Excellent. Thank you, Sam. And we got one question here, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to direct this one to you because I think you'll have more knowledge.
Oh, no problem.
And it's from Mr. Chopra, and it says, when companies invest in situational leadership, what has been the change in the company, and has it directly affected their results?
Very good question. And there was a time, I've been doing this 40 years, right? Sure, I don't look that old, but there was a time when you just did training because it was something you needed to do, right? Not the case anymore, as Mr. Chopra points out. It's sort of like, if we're going to invest to send an employee to situational leadership, what are we getting back out of that? What's the return, on that investment? It's a very reasonable question. And part of that has to do with the learner, him or herself. They have to want to get better. They have to want to apply the skills that they learn after they've learned them. It doesn't make any sense if you go to golf lessons and then never pick up a club again, right? So a big part of it is learning what to do, but then implementing that and getting some coaching and getting some feedback. But what results should you get? 3 big banners: productivity, engagement, retention. And we have some studies on our website that speak to that, and work that our customers have done. But situational leadership is an investment in accelerating the development of people and stopping their regression. And there's definitely a bottom line productivity component to that. Engagement. If your boss matches his or her style to your level of readiness on a consistent basis, you like that boss. You have a relationship with that boss. You are more engaged at work than you otherwise would be. And that impacts, your propensity to stay around, the whole idea of retention. So those 3 things, and all 3 of those things are fairly easy to measure within an organization, kind of a pre-post test. Before training, what's productivity? What climate survey on engagement? And what are our retention numbers? Training, reasonable period of time, test again, and you should be able to see, if effectively implemented, you should be able to see migration in a positive direction. But I think that's extremely important. The problems that we focus upon, DOOR, Center for Leadership Studies, they are training problems. They're business problems, right? And you're attacking those business problems through leadership development and through leadership training. Very good question.
Great. Sam, thank you. Mr. Chopra and all the audience, thank you very much. I think rather than really delve into mastery of this model, it's sincerely one of the deepest models that you can engage with if you're a decision maker, if you're someone that's aspiring to develop yourself, or that you're feeling stress in the new role you might be in and you need to manage a team and you're not quite sure how to do it. By all means, practicing this, knowing how this model works and how to apply it appropriately can support in excellent ways. Now, we do have a few more questions here. I think we will continue the discussion. Mr. Joanna, Tobias, we don't want to keep you more than the time. We want to respect everyone's time, but by all means, these questions are exactly it. How do we deal with people that we might need to match in an appropriate way? What happens? And I think, Sam, one thing you mentioned was key is that you like leaders that match your readiness level. Can we measure how many people we've saved from burnout because their leaders are managing them appropriately and they're not getting completely expected to do things that they actually are unable to do? So let's keep the discussion going. Do follow us on LinkedIn, write to our email, info@doortraining.com. Stay in touch. We will be hosting more webinars. And by all means, Sam, I hope everyone, you feel okay if people start adding you on LinkedIn that have been viewing us today. And
That would be fine. One thing, Sebastian, I just would like to say, to you and Sue in particular, also Elisa, Joanna, everybody at Door, thank you very much for everything that went into this and for our budding partnership, and just appreciate it. So I'm honored by the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. Again, as mentioned, humbled by participating together. Sue and team, thank you for supporting us. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining. You have a nice day or a nice evening. Thank you, guys.
Take care, everybody.